My pantomime is working. Okay. I was talking to BL, and who with Joe helps to guide all these things behind the scenes. And I said, well, everything will be fine, even if you can't be there right now, as long as I don't forget to press the microphone to green and leave it on orange. But now it's green, and I hope, let's see here, I hope you can be hearing me. I trust that that is the case. Yes. Well, there's a lot going on right now. I must say, I'm even surprised that we do have some attendees here. I'm happy to see you. The Senate, or rather House of Representatives impeachment hearings with all of the kind of intricate questioning and the attempts of deeply divided orientations towards life to promote their point of view. All of that is very much in process right now. It seems that what the Christ said, I come to bring not peace, but the sword. And of course, you can look at that in various ways. And I think one of the ways to look at it is the sword of discrimination. And I do recall Master M talking about trying to clarify the different lines of opposition so things could be clear to the people who actually, of course, have the vote and so often are struggling under incomplete knowledge. Excuse me. We don't expect that to lift anytime soon because there's much more education to pass through before really critical thinking is possible to many people. But in general, we have the world divided today between those that adhere to the values of personality and those who are beginning to understand something about the values of the higher of the pairs of opposites. And that's what we see working out here. We have the red of Mars and the blue of Jupiter contending with each other. Of course, red can stand for many things, including the first ray, but it's also the color of Mars. And Jupiter is, the color is blue and with some additional purple or violet found within it. And that's what's happening. And I think various countries of the world will now be tested regarding their values, whether fascism shall again present a great danger to humanity, or whether the true will of the people and of their best elements can prevail. So, as I say, it's good to see you here, but I wouldn't be surprised if quite a number of people are tuning in on this somehow very important questioning session. I kind of study a little bit the astrology of the people who are being questioned in these hearings, and the woman, in this case, Marie Ivanovich, has about 5 planets in Scorpio and maybe a little bit in Sagittarius, maybe Mercury, and we're not sure of her rising sign, but she's a wonderful example of service to a selfless service to a nation. And we do have those kinds of people in the different kinds of countries, and they have a clear, relatively clear, and unglamored point of view, which is, really, really so important, really. And it's quite a contrast, of course, with others who are just trying to make emotional points of view prevail. I think humanity really is going through it. We have about 5.5 years until the great conclave of 2025. Much will have to be resolved by that time, because let's just say that momentous movements in hierarchy are planned for that time. As the Tibetan says, in all probability, and the movement will be outward with the actual externalization of the hierarchy, and the populating of the 5 major planetary centers by the masters, certain masters, their initiates, their disciples, so that the groundwork can be laid for the reappearance of the Christ whenever that is to occur. I have a feeling about it, that, or a thought maybe, that until we are in a way free of the Piscean age, at the end of this present century, and of the 6th ray, around the year 2117, that it will not be likely that the Christ will make his presence seen and known among the peoples of the world. We have to remember, that every eye will see him, shall see him. So, we live we live in momentous times, and a few nations perhaps are playing a bigger role. DK tells us about the fate of humanity being held in the hands of the United States, the United Kingdom, and Russia. But every nation, and certainly the nations which have developed to the point of thought, and have developed their causal body to a certain point, we might say the advanced nations of the world, every one of them is deeply involved in the decision that is being made. Some are relatively honest, and the level of corruption is very low. Some are very dishonest and are still, you might say, at the strongman stage, where basically a nation is just to be ripped off for your own benefit. So these are great struggles, and if we can help with the dissipation of glamours, then so much the better for everyone. I will have to, probably this will not be a, let's see what it's saying there. It's 8 o'clock now, yeah. It will not be a long session, this one. Famous last words, right? Because immediately following it is the cosmic fire, sort of our 10th cosmic fire video work together. And some of them are solo webinars, but at least 6 of them have been group webinars. And we're still laying the foundation for the study of cosmology and how this planet is put together in relation to the solar system and beyond. So it's a magnificent book, and I'm not saying that we're going to understand every little bit of it, but we will, as long as possible, persist with it. And that starts at 8 o'clock GMT. And I'm not sure, I don't know if there's anybody here to give you the, let's see, maybe there's something, okay, no, there's not really. If I were to turn, see, here's all of this going on, which I've been trying to follow. She's a wonderful woman, really. A treatise on cosmic fire, and I just want to, let's just say, edit that, and just bear with me here for a minute, with the hope that I can do this properly. Normally, either Joe or BL or Michael would put that in, but here is the webinar ID. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is put that in the chat box, because if you want to attend that, Cosmic Fire on the 15th of November, still in Scorpio very much, and here we go. There it is, and I'll send it to you. And if you want to come back in a little while and get into the Cosmic Fire work, then you're most welcome. Sometimes it's tough going. However, on Makara, there's the whole book is basically already commented upon. And if you really want to get into it very deeply, whether in your study groups or through these videos that I have made, I think the videos will help you. Okay? So basically, I want to welcome you, Alexandra and Anna and Annette and Antoinette, Ario, Barbara and Britta, Carl, Catherine and Deborah and Frida and Heike and Ishtar, Jan, Joan and Yohi, Karen and Marion, looks like Marion, Karim Joy, looks like that's the second name, Kim, hi, and Leslie, Mariut and Martha Gallagher and Martha Mickelson, and Michael Potras and Michael Starcrow, Natney, Olivia, Stacia, Suzanne, Tia, TU, and Tuya is here. I think she likes to be over on the other side there, so I'll do that. And TU, hi, and Zenaidi and Anne Veronica. And then BL is recording this, but she's not really with us at this time. So I'm kind of floating on my own here, okay, in terms of the technical side of things. These are dramatic days, I must say, and Master Moria told us throughout his books, wonderful books, you know, if you don't have the Agni Yoga books, then please get in touch with them, either through the Agni Yoga Society, where you have them in electronic form, or buy these little books, which are unique. They are unique. I remember working in the Lucis Trust in the 1980s, and having, being quite a ways from the United Nations and all, where the Lucis Trust was stationed quite close. And I had my eyes full reading those books, commuting forward and commuting back. And when I couldn't read, as I was walking briskly for 2 miles to work once I landed in New York, I would listen to the recordings. It's better to have your eyes on the street in New York than to leave this incarnation reading Agni Yoga. Although I must say there are probably worse ways to go. So I've read those books over and over. And when you put that first ray presentation of the yoga of synthesis together with DK's second ray presentation of the yoga of synthesis, you're really getting a marvelous instruction. And it will percolate in your consciousness, and it will rise to the surface when it is needed. So here we are. I think, gosh, it's been, this is program 136. Olivia suggested, why don't we do glamour? And Tuya had been knocking on my hard head to do it for quite a while too. So it was a while ago that we began, and this is our reading number 76, though our program 136. So here we go. And almost any place that you pick up the Tibetan's books and start to read, you can get to any other place, you know. So basically, right before that, he talks about a mental illusion. Let's keep it in mind, because this book is great in that we study not only glamour, technically speaking, but we study illusion and Maya. So a mental illusion, this is where we left off, might be described as an idea embodied in an ideal form, you know, one to which we have attached our emotions and our aspirations, which permits no room or scope for any other form of ideal. In other words, it's limited. You're never going to get the full truth anywhere near it from an illusion. It precludes an ability, therefore, to contact real ideas. We're so fixated on the ideal that we're holding to ourselves and thinking it's the only one in town. You know, there's so many six-ray groups that do exactly this, you know, especially in the religious field, and they have no room for the wider perspective. The man is tied. There's that word again, and remember what Bucyrus basically did with Hercules in the Gemini labor. He tied him to the altar, you know, and of course I think Hercules returned the favor when he finally got sick of it all and left Bucyrus and tied him to the altar. Anyway, the world is wide, and it's not only along one line that we gain the entire truth. The man is tied to the world of ideals. So that really involves the astral body quite a bit, and of idealism, which involves the lower mental body and the aspiration and emotionality. He cannot move away from it. This mental illusion ties and limits and imprisons the man. It's only part of the story, and it's probably inaccurate as it is because it's not held up to the greater light of the spiritual triad. A good idea may consequently become an illusion with what? If I can just get there. With great facility, and prove a disastrous conditioning factor in the life of the man who registers it. I mean, I was going to say earlier that Master Moria warned about how fast a nation could fall much faster than one might imagine. All you have to have is poor leadership and ignorance, and your nation will fall. And it will go down cherishing certain ideals which are selfish and not uplifting at all. So that was the segue that we had, and I think it begins to introduce us to what illusions are. I think in a way it's more difficult to understand illusion than it is glamour. We are not yet mentally focused entirely, and we're certainly not yet entirely mentally polarized. That's an event that occurs between the second and the third initiation, and probably more people think that they stand at that point than actually stand at that point. And I just want to say, look, I cannot hear myself talk, okay? All I can see is if the little green indicator is functioning. So if I'm too loud, turn the volume of your computer down, and if I'm too soft, turn it up. Because you have the control there, and I do not, okay? All right, so going on now into reading number 76, and he's going to discuss something about illusion, which we remember has to be dispelled, whereas glamour has to be dissipated, and Maya has to be dispersed. He's such a good teacher, he gives us these mnemonics, a series of I's, a series of D's, all beginning with the same letter, so that we can hold them in our memory, because it really is necessary to utilize the memory in any kind of deep learning, and especially occultism. There was a time when people just had to learn by rote, just memorize, and they didn't really think for themselves. Both are necessary, to think for yourself and to use the memory as best as may be, as best you can. So, if I say to you, what are the 7 laws of the soul, you should know what they are. If I say to you, what are the 12 signs of the zodiac, you should know them in order. If I say, what are the fire signs, the earth signs, the water signs, etc., you should know them. You should know the rulerships of every sign of the zodiac, not only the orthodox ruler, you should know the esoteric ruler, and finally the hierarchical ruler. The lots of things, the 7 laws of the universe and the 3 cosmic laws and all that. It's probably under 100 things that you should know immediately by heart. And if you do, you'll be able to make the combinations that reveal truth. So don't shun the memory. Memory is really very important in the study of occultism. It says here, you might well ask here, if the hierarchy itself is not conditioned by an idea. Remember, an idea is a being incorporeal, without body, that gives shape and form to formless matter, something of that nature. Yes, and that's correct, BL. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's very good. To dispel illusion, it goes faster. To disperse glamour, to dissipate glamour goes a little slower. And then disperse Maya, the slowest of them all, but still effective. So maybe hierarchy itself is a victim of general and widespread illusion, and to an extent that's true, because we only lessen our illusions as we ascend. Let's just say that somewhere he tells us that until the ninth initiation, we are subject to illusion, at least illusion in the way he is describing it. And even our great teachers are nowhere near the ninth initiation and ready to leave yet the cosmic physical plane. Apart from the fact that the directors of hierarchy, the three great lords, we might say, and the custodians of the plan are never permitted to become such, to occupy those positions until they are free from the incentive of illusion. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean they're free from illusion, but from the prompting towards the enactment of illusion. He's not just putting that word incentive there for no reason at all. There may be promptings, but they do recognize the nature of those promptings. Apart from that, I would remind you that all ideas stream into the planetary consciousness along the channel of the seven rays. So basically we have the seven rays are the source of ideas, or at least of many. These are the seven spirits before the throne, and let's just say that they continue upward until the Great Bear. So the seven major stars of the Great Bear are sources of ideas, but it goes on and on and on, way beyond that, until you come to the origin of any particular universe, where you have a great septenate at the height of the universe, and those are the seven spirits before the truly universal throne. Okay, so seven spirits before the truly universal throne. And I probably should make that a capital. And who sits on that throne? Well, it's not Sanat Kumara, it's not the solar logos, it's not a cosmic logos or a super cosmic logos, it's none of those. Who sits on that universal throne, as it were, using our language, and it's going to be the Lord of the entire universe, the universal logos. And seven are the integer gods. I like to call them integer gods because they are correlated with, actually there's 9, but 7 occupy this position of spirits before the throne. And each one of those integers, a number, has unique qualities to be spread throughout the process of emanation in the enactment of the universal archetype. The universal archetype has to be enacted and put together in the lower worlds, just as it exists in the higher worlds. Thus, the hierarchy, he says here, is wide open, in any case, to the 7 major groups of ideas, which are the idea of God for any specific point in time, expressed in 7 major ways. And who's, you always have to be careful, who's God? Who's God at any particular point? Now we're not talking about the universal logos, we are talking about the superior deity, superior to the planets. We're talking about a solar logos with its 7 major groups of ideas. And beyond that, the 7 solar systems, of which ours is one, and beyond that, the unknown, or the one about whom not may be said, but always this 7-ness, this septenate prevails. All of these ideas are equally right and serving the 7-fold need of humanity. Now that's interesting. It's like saying, we need all the rays and the ideas which those rays can bestow. Each of these 7 formulations of the one great idea, of God's idea, has its specific contribution to make. Well, you just start thinking about the gifts of the ashrams, and you just wouldn't want to be without any of the 7 rays. It would be an incomplete picture, very much so, and something would just be missing, which was essential. And all, of course, the ideas that correlate with those rays would be missing, and we could not guide ourselves properly in building the reflection of the universal archetype, or coming closer to home, the reflection of our planetary archetype, whichever planet it may be, and the reflection of the solar logoic archetype. We have to be able to bring our little portion, our little planetary portion, into conformity with a higher archetype. And even the planetary logos has his own archetype, which in the lower worlds we have to work upon building a reflection in the mosaic world of the planetary archetype. It's going to go on a long time, and it always has. Relative to our brief life in incarnation, our long-term history goes on a long time. And so it's better to think in terms, I always think in terms of infinity, think in terms of your real identity as being the absolute deity who is infinite in an infinite number of ways, as Spinoza was saying, and think in those terms every once in a while, and then maybe some kind of patience will develop, which every one of us will need over the long haul. DK says, look, you better develop patience now, because when you're on the other side, you'll see how hard it is to get through to the consciousness of the disciples and the aspirants and the people you would reach. It's very hard, so you need patience to do it. So there are 7 formulations of God, the solar logos' idea, and it has its specific contribution to make, and we learn something about that contribution when we have, let's say, a personality ray on one of the 7 rays. Now, probably not until later is it likely, and then not always even then, to have a personality ray which is the same as your soul ray. He does kind of, as a matter of fact, he tells us it's not even likely to have a mental ray which is the same ray as your soul ray. Somewhere around page 57 in this book, he describes that. But all of us, it's because we have made the kind of progress we have, have been born at least on 6 different personality rays, and maybe not yet, or maybe never, on the personality ray which is the same as your soul ray. So when you see ray theorists going like this, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, and trying to describe the life of Mozart, let's say, you know there is likely to be some error in that description. But anyway, every ashram, every ray ashram has its contribution, and you reflecting your ray ashram and then having a personality ray that has been reoriented towards soul purpose, you too, and I, and all, have our contribution to make. So these formulations, each of them is the true idea, which has its part to play in human and planetary service. It's more than just a mental formulation. An idea is really a being, okay? More than just a mental formulation. If you think about it, there's nothing in cosmos other than the essence of the absolute, which is not an idea. The absoluteness itself is not an idea. It's the beingness of every possibility, the fount of all possibility, I like to say, except the fact that it's that some consider it not the fount of all possibility. So in other words, we cannot negate absoluteness. All possibility except the self-canceling possibility exists within the absolute. And every one of these, when you start to, come down into the universe and so forth, and there are realms which are supra-universal, above the universe, above that perception, that limited perception, which is the universe. All of those perceptions, the major 7 numbers, have their part to play in the formulation of any impending universe. So it's more than mental, okay? Okay, these ideas. And each of them is so interrelated with the other 6 expressions of the same divine idea, working out as ideals upon the mental plane, mental, I would say mental plus the emotional content, that there can be no narrowing down to one idea with its ramifications as happens among men. This is what you might call, let me just get this straight, and I just want to underline it. This would be what you would call, like this, being stuck in your ray. In other words, you would be so fanatically emphatic about the major idea that is animating you that, in fact, you would fail to see the complete picture. And that would be, unfortunate, and it is the condition in which many people exist, including the members of the Black Lodge, who are considered to be brothers of unique blindness. So they just don't see the place for love in the solar system or in the local cosmos in which they exist, or maybe in general. and they discount it and don't deal with it. They're totally identified with intelligent manipulation and power. And because they miss the love energy, miss it out completely, they are in a position of deep, deep illusion. Okay? So there should be and can be no narrowing down to one idea. You've all talked to fanatics, or been one yourself, maybe. I raise my hand, okay? So, and maybe emphasize one thing above all things, and constantly, until you just make people weary, that is a prescription for illusion as he is discussing it. No narrowing down to one idea with its ramifications, as happens among men, should not happen so much among members of the kingdom of souls, or certainly the members of the planetary lives and onward. Should not. So that's called, being stuck in your ray, or just say, I want to say, being stuck in your major conditioning ray. So try to catch yourself if that's what you're doing, because we might fall into the pattern of what's called undue emphasis, just overdoing the emphasis on the part. We've talked about that when dealing with partisanship and partiality. It's so important. People are just seeing a tiny little fragment of the whole in which they perforce live, and with all they've got, they're pushing that fragment, and it leads to destruction and delay when it comes to manifesting the entirety of the divine plan. There is at least sensitivity to 7 groups of ideas and their resultant ideals. The ideal kind of focuses the idea, makes it a little more practical, and puts the energy of aspiration and emotion behind it. And if there were no more than that, the hierarchy is so far fluid and pliable. Okay, it is that. Hierarchy has a lot of adaptability, and they oftentimes have to adapt to what human beings are doing. And human beings are left in a relative degree of freedom to do what they do. So hierarchy is, in a way, ever adaptable. But it is far more than this. For to the members of the hierarchy, the idea and its effects are not only interpreted in terms of human thought forms and human idealism, but they are also to be contacted and studied in relation to the mind of God himself and to the planetary kingdoms. So I just want to, I just try to emphasize some things that are really important. And that what that means is, although we say, well, let's say, let's see here. I don't know why I can't get this, but okay, let's go back there. Somehow I have, this is not going forward the way I wanted to. Okay. So, yeah, when it comes to ideas, we say, okay, they originate on the Buddhic plane. Well, let's say our first contact with ideas as beings who have no body per se may be met on the Buddhic plane, but every one of these planes is a plane of ideas. And if we go still further, when we go backwards, the mind of God, while reflected down here on the 3rd level of the cosmic physical plane, and probably on the third level of the cosmic astral plane and cosmic mental, the mind of God is very much here on the cosmic mental plane and above. So this idea of how much of the mind of God we really contact depends on which God, Now, if we contact the atomic plane on the cosmic physical plane, or even the higher mental plane, we do have a kind of reflection of the mind of God. But if we go all the way up to the logoic plane, where the highest level of Shambhala can be found, we contact even more of the mind of God. And if we leave the cosmic physical plane and journey, as the Buddha did, to the cosmic mental plane, even more of the mind of, or cosmic mental plane, even more of the mind of God. And on it goes. So when we're studying ideas, we may relate them to human life, but this great septonate of ray ideas has to do with higher beings as well, and we should not forget that. You know the old saying, you want to remember something? Press the bridge of your nose. I know, Agni Yoga is just so full of those practical suggestions, because the first ray has a lot to do with shaping, let's say, the human physical form on the dense physical plane. So it's got to be very practical, okay? I hope you know that when something comes up and you're interested, you take notes, right? So that we can talk about it. These ideas, at first, I tried to explain the larger picture, come from and emanate from the Buddhic plane. By the way, the Buddhic plane, well, just the way Mercury is called in its higher expression, it's called transcendental mind, then the Buddhic plane is the plane of pure reason, inclusive reason, very high Mercury, and on it, transcendental mind, a realm of ideas can be found. So these ideas come from, as far as we're concerned, building the Antakarana as we do, they come from the Buddhic plane, which is seldom open to the consciousness of the average disciple, such as you and me. I mean, we are, DK says, better consider yourself the average disciple, or you're going to get into trouble with separativeness, okay? So, seldom open to the consciousness of the average disciple, and certainly is not open to the contact of the average idealist, so it kind of tells you that the average idealist is focused in mind, okay, yes, but it's lower mind, it's not the higher mind. I would here remind you that few idealists are personally in touch with the idea which has given birth to the idealism. Now that's really something to ponder. You know how we can be so driven by an ideal, but where did it come from? What is the greater idea behind that? Behind that propulsive ideal. So the idea is the root, and the ideal is the result. But what is the idea behind the ideal, and what is the ideal behind the idol? Now we have three things going there: the idea, the ideal, and the idol. And Westerners can be extraordinarily stupid when it comes to interpreting the esotericism of the East. So they arrived in the Far East, and here are all these statues of the various gods, and they have all these arms, and etc. And the people look like they're worshiping that particular material formation, and they call it idolatry. But they weren't doing that at all. At least the people that knew, they were just looking at the idol as the symbol of the ideal, and the ideal, in a way, as an aspect of the true idea. So the consciousness of the Easterner was far more refined than the superior Westerner thought it might be. So few idealists are in touch with the idea. They are only in touch with the human interpretation of the idea as formulated by some disciple or intuitive of very different things. So think about it. He's saying, look, you're not really in touch here with the idea, just the human interpretation. So it gives you pause for a little bit of humility. And how much, as we go through the initiatory process, how much we have yet to learn. Okay, now, of course, wouldn't you know it, I seem to have lost. Oh no, there it is. I didn't quite lose it. Okay, so I'm just going to close this discussion with the first sentence or so in the next paragraph, and take up the next paragraph when next we meet. An illusion. Because, we want to be accurate with our words if we're going to talk about being in an illuded or deluded state, or a glamored state, or a myopic state. We want to know what we're talking about, and be accurate. An illusion can, therefore, be defined as the consequence of an idea translated into ideal being regarded as the entire presentation, as the complete story or solution, and as being separated from and visioned independently of all other ideas, both religious in nature or apparently completely unrelated to religion. So there's a whole separative elements operating in the usual approach to illusion. In this statement lies the story of separation and man's inability to relate the various implications of a divine idea with each other. So now I think maybe we begin to understand how it is that the second ray, which has a very broad type of inclusive understanding and is related to the intuition, has a very good chance of being used to dispel illusions, because the nature of the second ray is relationship, and trying to find out what is the real relationship existing between the various things which perception reveals. So basically, perception reveals many interrelationships, and we learn through pure reason, under Mercury and transcendental mind, to understand the nature of truth and the nature of illusion. So we're going to get further into this question of illusion, and Well, we don't have to worry about that because we're already in illusion pretty well, but at least to understand it and to extricate ourselves from it. Extricate means to get out of it. All right. So this is the way it'll be next time, and this was the end of 136, and this was number 76, and this is the 15th. And the next thing will be in our glamour studies and meditations, and it'll be morning presentation, and it'll be reading 131. It's a little book, so we have to go slowly, right? And I'll read again what we will start with about what illusion can be considered. So think about, for a moment, what we've studied. Not a lot, but something here. And how there are 7 major groups of ideas. They come along the 7 ray lines, that all true beings are really ideas in a way, all true beings in our cosmos, that the only thing that's not an idea is the absolute itself, that we need to learn to use constructively the streams of energy that come from any one of the 7 directions, because in the beginning we do not use these things constructively. All the different ray forces fight against each other. Later, they all get to the top of the mountain and say, well, we're all one thing and everything was necessary after all. So according to the ashram towards which we are gravitating, and like I say, many people here sticking with Master DK, not necessarily, I mean, he has, students on all the rays, but the tendency is towards the second ray on some significant level, either your monad or your soul. And I think we saw that in his groups of students. So let's not get stuck in a small part of reality, thinking it's the only thing. And let's somehow try to understand other people who are expressing in completely different ways. Now, I feel it's my duty to listen to these impeachment hearings, and I supply plenty of imaginative thought into the midst of these hearings, trying to contribute my bit to a proper outcome. But there's a lot of first ray, 7th ray, and 6th ray types in that room. Now, whatever the subrays may be, we'd have to know the people. But in the political field, and that's what they're doing, it's the first ray, the 6th ray, and the 7th ray. And somewhere in the destiny of the nations, it brings that part forward, that those are the political workers particularly, not just the first ray types. All right, so on we move, and now it's time, if you have thoughts, questions to write or to speak. Like I say, I think I may be somewhat alone here in terms of the technical assistance. BL and Joe and Michael, they do so much for technical assistance, but sometimes the hour is late, is early, and one just has to be on one's own the best one can. So if you have something that you want to say, you raise your hand. If you have something you want to write, you just put it in the question box under, what does it say, under attendees with unanswered questions, okay, under the question mark. you click that and then you write it out, I suppose, in questions, right over here, like I would write it out here. Maybe you can't see what I'm doing, but anyway, I would write it out in the question area, and I'll try not to miss it and to address it the best way I can. What we're trying to do is clarify human consciousness so that it sees the truth, and rather than all the different ways that misperception, misguidance, confusion, chaos can result. Okay, anything. Is there anything? And I'm just going to go up and down here to, okay, here we go. And there's a few things. Okay, so here it is, Kim. She asked about the 3 Ds. And the first one is to dispel illusion. It's almost like it just vanishes. And the bubble pops, and you see the truth that was being concealed. And then to dissipate glamour, and to disperse illusion. And of course, I'm not even sure how I can do this. Carl, I hope, Carl, you were able to. Okay, you got it. Yeah. When something goes wrong, just go out. And if you're not an organizer, you don't run the risk of canceling the whole show, you know. Then come back in again. The Agni Yoga books, Leslie, I would suggest going to the Agni Yoga Society in New York or writing them. They're on 107th Street, but at the same time, just look up Agni Yoga, and you can get all the books, and you just have to cut and paste, okay? That's another way of doing it. And I've gone there. See, Lucis Trust has a very good and a very sophisticated way of accessing the information. You can write several words, and they don't have to be in that order and so forth. It'll just go to the page where those words are found. That's great. But not Agni Yoga and some of the others. I just tend to write one word. Because if I write 2 words, I have to make sure that those 2 words are really next to each other. Otherwise, it won't find them. Okay? So that is something that, you have to think about. But I've used Agni Yoga Society. I don't know if it's .com or .whatever. Just look it up under Google and you'll find it. And they have a building there, with a lot of the Roerich Museum, with a lot of the original paintings of Roerich. Not all by any means. There are other places which feature those paintings, and they hold classes now and then. I was a member in the 80s of a study group that met every 2 weeks. And what I discovered is that we have to be very grateful to the Tibetan for giving us information and ways of thinking which help with the interpretation of other presentations. Something about the acute mind of the Tibetan which is so useful even when working in the more symbolic Agni Yoga area. So just their address will be there. Just give them a call. I think, you should buy the books from them, I would say, if you want to do it that way, or if you just want to cut and paste, you can do that online. Okay, now the 7 laws of the soul, Suzanne, you ask about that. Look, right in Esoteric Psychology, Volume 2. There's some more than 100 pages on the laws of the soul, and certainly the first 5 apply to us. Also in Cosmic Fire, you will find material on the laws of the soul, but they're not as developed. It's just the outline. The symbols are there. And let's see here if I can find this for you very quickly. Esoteric. If you hear a big bell, I'm sorry. It just seems to happen if I click twice rather than once. Well, there are going to be 8 places, and we're just about to begin them. And here, right in here, in the teens of Volume 2, the laws of the soul. And let's see, under the arch, and also the old commentary that goes with them. Let's see if they let me. He asked us to do some pretty demanding things here, and he assigns rays to the different groupings of sayings. But anyway, it's marvelous. You know, sometime we'll have to, I keep on hoping that we'll be able to pick up so many of these books and just kind of study them together. You know, there's just only so much time in the day to do that, but it would be very useful. And here, you know, where I'm under the law of service here, and I'm going to the law of sacrifice. Yes, that's right. And that's where it begins. The work of salvage is salvation. Okay. Law of sacrifice, and there it is. So now, right around page 87 or so, and a little bit before, you can begin reading about the laws of the soul. Now, of course, here it is, the 7 laws of the soul, and it goes on for a while, and basically page 85. 7 laws of the soul, page 85, Esoteric Psychology, Volume 2. Now, obviously, in the Moria Federation and in our curriculum, which, interestingly, is very much the Tibetans' curriculum for the preparatory schools, as much as we can. Can't do everything. All of this is studied intensively, and you have a chance to write your responses and write little papers and so forth like that until it really, excuse me, sinks into you. And that's so important, you know, law of sacrifice, law of magnetic impulse. Also, they give you the esoteric names of the law of service and the 7 different methods of service. The law of repulse, which, you know, is a first-ray law, and you cast away from you all the things that are not of the soul, only to reclaim them later. And then the law of group progress, which you would think might be ruled by Aquarius, but actually it's ruled by Capricorn, because it's also called the law of elevation. So, and you know, there's interesting esoteric names. I don't know if I remember them all, but the law of sacrifice is the law of those who choose to die. And the law of magnetic impulse is the law of polar union. It's all interpretation from the point of view of the soul. And I guess the law of service is the law of water and the fishes, something like that. And when it comes to the law of repulse, there may be another name for it. I'm not sure. It's a very first-rate law. And then Law 5, the law of group progress, is also called the law of elevation. We're all climbing together. Then there are a couple of obscure laws, 6 and 7. I don't know to what extent we can really apply them to ourselves. The last one's called the law of the lower 4. It's number 7. And I remember sort of the symbol of a rosy sun for the 6th law. Yeah, it's called the law of expansive response, number 6. They get more and more elevated as you go on, and some very advanced meditation methods and subjects are suggested for each of these laws. Look, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of studying the Tibetans' books from start to finish, from finish to start. I can't emphasize it enough. It'll, give you a lot of reading to do, yes. But there's no, what are you going to do about the secret doctrine? You have to read it, and you may discover in all humility that there's more in there than any one of us can really take in, but you've got to read it. And the same with Isis Unveiled, and the same with Cosmic Fire and the other works of the Tibetan, although it's not enough time. At a certain point in the arcane school, they say, okay, are you ready now to do an hour of study before you begin your meditation? Or, are you ready now really to study? And I just have to recommend it. Of course, maybe a person like me, I'm so oriented towards study, that doesn't mean that I necessarily neglect meditation and neglect service, but, I was just born with this thing about study, and I can only recommend that this is how we find out. And if you have a choice between doing your studies and maybe other things, maybe the studies are really, really important, okay? So go to Esoteric Psychology to page, 85 or so, and you can begin reading the laws of the soul. Now going on, Patience of a Saint, yeah. Well, this is Kim talking about, so that's why they say the patience of a saint. Let's just say there comes a time when we realize that all of us are eventually going to be absorbed into the absolute deity and recognize one step short of absoluteness that we are this absolute deity once the universe, any universe, has disappeared. That means once the process which produces a universe disappears. Now, this is a long way from what science is proposing, and Master Kutumi pretty well tells us, look, there's going to be a lot of adjustments made in the scientific field as occultism becomes more and more accepted. So let's just watch that happen. Meanwhile, you realize that you are forever ineradicable. You cannot be destroyed. There's nothing to destroy you because there's nothing else than what you are, essentially. Now that, seems presumptuous, and it seems like, oh, better lock that person up, the little men with the butterfly nets running after you and all that. And it can be considered the height of egoism to say that you are all there is. But It's not. It's a very humbling thing, really. And it gets to the essence of the matter. There's only one being in town, as it were, forever. So forever has forever elapsed as that one being, and you've already been around forever. Been around. Where else is there to be? So, it just takes the mind and does something with it. But a few minutes a day of pondering some of these far-out things can give a kind of perspective which induces patience. Now, you know how impatience and irritation work together. Master Moria has a statement about this that I've mentioned before, and he says, if you want to wear away irritation, and you might say also impatience that goes with it, utilize cosmic perception. Wear away impatience and irritation through cosmic perception. Now, none of us is capable right now of supercosmic perception, but forever we have had that opportunity, and forever we have been exposed to supercosmic perception cyclically. And the one thing we can do while the universe is going on is learn how to infusive, as I use that word, and see things as part of a formless, all-pervading reality that somehow we're able to get with our heart center or heart centers, and then suddenly something just dawns on you, a realization, and it's a realization beyond form, and yet all forms are pervaded by it. So patience, and of course, Alice Bailey and the Tibetan, they're not too friendly towards just being a saint. They say that's a very sixth-rate thing to be. Nothing wrong with it. There have been some wonderful saints, but they also say that the saint can be a little bit fanatical and can shut out many things that have to be learned. What was it? One guy, was it Saint Simeon Stylitis or something like that? He sat on a pillar for his whole life. He climbed up on a pillar, and he never got off, and he was deemed to be a saint. Another man held his arm straight out, and I don't know what he did when he slept, but when he was awake, he just held his arm out until it just froze in place, and he was considered to be a saint, So Alice Bailey has sometimes utilized the word a stupid saint because they didn't cultivate their mind. They cultivated other things. And there, as I say, there were some wonderful saints, of course, that also had something of the occult understanding. But we're transitioning out of the sixth-ray age now, and our attitude towards saints is maybe a little different. Okay, so a possible summarization here, Suzanne, you're saying illusions lack synthesis. Okay, this sounds a good one. And also ponder upon receiving ideas, ponder upon relating ideas, ponder upon the inclusive point of view. To me, the only disillusioned perceiver is the absolute deity that perceives all as absolute infinity. Now, I know that's a mouthful, but basically that's saying that if you want to get rid of illusion, get rid of the universe too, cyclically, and you'll be thrown into a condition which is non-elusive. That's my view of the matter. And here's Michael saying that the impeachment hearings is such an excellent example of illusion. Yeah, there are many hardened thought forms there, and they are being pushed forward as the truth in isolation from many other things which are also true. Thanks for that. I have to pick it up a little later when it gives us the high points. The guy, that's running this, Adam Schiff, I'm just amazed at how many Geminis there are in all this. President Trump, Rudolph Giuliani, the William Barr, the head of the Department of Justice, then Adam Schiff, a Gemini, and others. It's just running over with Geminis. We all know that Gemini can be associated with very pure form of truth or lots of lies. We know that too. And it's interesting that, let's see, there's something I wanted to say about Gemini. I wanted to say this about Adam Schiff, because I study the astrology of these people as they talk, and you notice how he keeps on flashing his eyes and widening his eyes and expressing through his eyes in a kind of a controlling manner. This to me is nobody knows his ascending sign. I think it's Aries, and Aries people tend to do that a lot with their eyes. It's quite a feature. He has the long neck and the big head of the Aries type. So anyway, okay. Disperse Maya and dispel illusion. Okay, yeah, that's it. All right, thank you. And now here's the Agni Yoga downloads that Kim is giving us. And Daniel Leslie, before he died, I guess you asked him what was recorded. Gloria Crook in the Dallas School of the Ageless Wisdom had one of her students, long time ago, record a lot of Agni Yoga books. I think Gloria is still alive, living to a ripe old age, and I would check with her. At the time, they were just tapes, but who knows what they may have done with it with the new technology. I benefited from their Fiery World, Agni Yoga, some other books that they had recorded. I don't know if they recorded all of them, but those books are recorded, and if there are some that are not, it's a worthwhile service for someone to undertake. Okay, here's Kim again asking, what are the 7 laws? Well, the 7 laws of what? The 7 laws of the soul, how to live and express as a soul in everyday life. The 7 laws of the solar system, it's how our solar system functions, law of vibration, law of cohesion, law of disintegration, and something about the solar angel, and law number 4, I forget what it is, law of fixation number 5, law of love number 6, law of death and disintegration number 7. And I just have to look up that number 4. It has to do with the way the solar angels are operating. Someone can find it if you wish. And others. Look, when you put together the 3 Lapika lords and the 4 Maharajas, you've got another 7 there. So just look for the septonates. Oftentimes in the footnote of a cosmic fire, you're going to find him listing, here are all the 10s, here are all the 3s, here are all the 4s, and it's eye-opening to see what they are. Okay, and here's Antoinette saying, not able to talk now due to noise. Okay. My question, would creative meditation on the laws and principles be working through these seed thoughts, ideas, and goals? Well, here's the thing about laws and principles. There are, Meditation Mount, and Assagioli kind of insisted on that. I think he was one of the founders there. They meditate upon what's called the laws and principles. So if you mean those 7 items, and I think they can be found somewhere in Discipleship number 2, are they necessarily correlated with the rays? Not necessarily. Let's just see if I can do a very quick, I'm not sure I can. It's kind of, okay, wait a second. Here it is. Get rid of that. Let's just see if I can find anything. Laws and principles. Well, there are 4, and laws and principles. It's Dyna 2. So it's somewhere right in here. We're in the 230s. Laws and principles. And, well, somewhere in here, you're going to find them. And I myself, I have not worked through Meditation Mount so much, so I could not repeat what they are. But someone can find them in the Meditation Mount literature. They have the bookmarks and other things with the laws and principles. We're only given 7. I mean, we're just given 4 references right now. Aha! It's right under my nose. That's it. Now, are there only 6? I thought there were 7. Okay, so let's just see what we have. And they are not absolutely ray correlated, okay? They are not. However, let's read them at least. The law of right human relations. It's got a lot of second ray in it, of course. 4th ray. The principle of goodwill. Second ray and third ray. The law of group endeavor. Yeah, we can't really correlate these exactly with rays. The principle of unanimity, of one-souledness, in a way. The law of spiritual approach, and the principle of essential divinity. So make note of that if you want to see what are the laws and principles, page 237, Dyna 2. For a long time, Meditation Mount has used these as themes for meditation. Right here we have it. 239 and 238, the laws and principles as themes for meditation. I did think there were 7, but maybe there are only 6. Maybe only 6, and it's right before the teachings on initiations. So I herein present for you 6 themes for group meditation. This is essentially your next consideration if the unanimous and simultaneous meditation, which can be immediately effective, is organized and developed. Okay? So I think you came up with a good point there, and something that we want to bear in mind. Dyna 2, page 238, 239, and page 237. All right, let's just see. I can't stay too long, otherwise I'm going to run into cosmic fire. As a matter of fact, it's a danger even right now. I'm almost there, and attendees have questions. Okay, and thank you, Suzanne. Thank you. And Leslie, you mentioned listening to recordings while commuting. You're 2 miles either way. No, not only AA books, AAB books. I did mean Agni Yoga, because Gloria Crook and her group at the Dallas School of the Ageless Wisdom had recorded at least, look, this was 30 years ago when I was doing this. It was in the early 80s. Maybe it's more. Maybe they've done the whole bit. So see what you can contact. See if you can contact her and see what they have done. Yes, I listened to whatever they had. And I particularly remember, I think, Agni Yoga and also Fiery World, Volume 1. And I'm sure there were others. Okay, no sound, but Vera, you came back. Or if you're still there, yes, you are. And talk about a septonate, huh? It says Roger Stone has been found guilty on 7 counts, including lying. The prosecutor, apparently summing up, gave a moving speech about how important this trial was in order to support how important it is to tell the truth. Well, yeah, he's obviously a third-rate guy, and, he could manipulate the truth very skillfully. Okay, that GC, yeah. And I think it's called, I think it used to be called Dallas School of the Ageless Wisdom. Okay, is there anything else? Have I touched on everybody who wrote a question mark? Anybody want to say anything? This would be your time. To raise your hand, or if you're on the other side, then just speak up, whatever. Okay, well, look, I'll tell you what. I have a little problem. It's called on and on, okay? I don't know that I have time to do the whole meditation. So what I'm going to do is abbreviate the meditation and then resume next time with that particular meditation. Look, the hearings will not be over, okay? And the whole principle of what I wanted us to meditate on will still be very much to the fore. We are witnessing a lot of partiality. It's the opposite of the Jupiterian inclusiveness, okay? And we are witnessing this whole idea that the end justifies the means, as long as my side, and therefore read illusion, accompanied by glamour, I would say, as long as my side benefits. Some people get so determined that their side shall benefit that they forget the values which would make the wholeness benefit, and they just don't care. So we'll take this up again. And next time, because we'll have I think a morning glamour discussion, the evening will be just Cosmic Fire, and we'll be okay. But I have to get all that out and start another webinar going and so forth. So I'm only going to ask us to do one thing here. I'm going to ask us to do the protective formula as we tune in with each other. So, thinking of the astral plane and also the lower mental plane, which combining, will be Kama Manas, and there's lots of problems with Kama Manas. We say, as a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. The light, the light, the light, the light, and the cross of divinity before the group. Now, rather than go through the whole thing, I just want us to prepare for what will be the actual meditation next time by thinking about the mantram, which is so often incorrect and so often harmful, but it's something that you see incredibly in these hearings. Doesn't make any difference what tactic you use. You know, you'll use it in order to get the result you want, even if it's not honest and it's misleading. Let's think about the harm that the statement, the end justifies the means, if my side can benefit. Let's think about that and what it has brought to humanity. See, with the Christ bringing not peace but the sword, there are going to be many dualities which are struggling with each other, and probably one of them will represent a higher of the pairs of opposites, and the other the lower in that pairs of opposites. But they'll both struggle, and probably those who represent the lower, probably they will use any method whatsoever to get their position in power. The end justifies the means as long as my side wins. Now, obviously, we are being taught how to be inclusive in our thinking. Because with this inclusivity and non-partiality, non-partisanship, we will avoid the worst of illusion and the worst of glamour. But as long as people have strictly personal values for which they are fighting, and that doesn't mean that one side is completely impersonal and the other is completely personal. Of course not. But there's tendencies. And as long as it's the personality that you're fighting for in your partisan efforts, the wider consideration which gives truth and understanding and respect for the many and the desire for the welfare for the many, all of those will be ignored. So this is going to be, at least in America, but it affects a lot of other people, and before long, let's just say, well, already probably the run-up to the general election in the UK is starting. You know, the two great Ray 2 soul groupings are being really, really challenged. Democracy, a second ray method, is being really challenged by people who just see a partial vision. So let's watch closely, observe closely during the coming week before our next gathering, how it is that so many people are using any tactic at all, even very dishonorable and reprehensible tactics to push their side of the partisanship, even if it's against the success, well-being of the wholeness. Let's watch those investigations when we can. Let's stay alert. The battle for democracy against fascism, as the Tibetan warned, is being fought out right now. And if fascism wins, we'll be right back where we started from, with very little time to correct it. So I'm just asking for a week of alertness, which reveals those who think in terms of the whole and those who just can't help but think only in terms of the part, and not even the highest part. Let's sound the Om 3 times, sending our blessing to humanity so that its mind, its sentient nature, and its etheric nature, etheric physical nature, can be illumined. Mind first. Thank you, everyone. In 15 minutes, we begin our cosmic fire work, building the foundation for all that will be said about fire by friction, solar fire, and electric fire. But if I don't get off now, I won't be able to bring that forward. So you have inside your chat box, you should have the link for a few things. The Agni Yoga is there, and here's this webinar ID that looks like Cosmic Fire. So just copy that if you want to join us. I want to thank you all for coming, the whole team that's behind this here, Olivia, Tuya, myself, and PL and Joe and Michael, Stacy, and others, help from others, of course, works to bring these thoughts and interactions to you. And hopefully we will be cleared of much of the glamour that still may prevent us from seeing as much truth as otherwise we could. So look, before long, probably overnight here, I will convert this to a way that you can use it. You can review it if you like. You can let your friends know, whatever. We want to be in a position to get as many people as possible who are sincere, working on seeing the truth, observing reality, and helping to dispel illusion, dissipate glamour, and disperse Maya. So for those who will do the Cosmic Fire, see you shortly, and the other webinar will be coming up. All the best. Okay, bye-bye for now.